Hey, everybody. It's Katrina with Scraps Closet Real Mom Talk. And today I'm here with Angel. Hi, Angel. And then we have a special guest today, Shannon Brooke. Hi. So happy Shannon is joining us today. Today, our session is about motherhood and adoption. And I couldn't think of anyone better to reach out to. Not only is she special to me, her journey is very special to me. And I feel like it's a journey that needs to be shared with the world. So I couldn't think of anyone else that I'd rather talk to or have talked to about this. So I'm going to give the floor to Shannon, and she's just going to tell us about her journey with motherhood and adoption.
Okay, so it's definitely a journey, not a destination. It's one of my biggest things, especially when you wind up with children that aren't walking in the direction in which you think they should walk. So something I say all the time is a journey, not a destination. So actually, my journey started long before I even thought about adopting, long before. So God, he prepares us, right? Sometimes we don't even know what he's preparing us for, but we know that he's preparing us. And so going back many years prior to even thinking about adoption, prior to being a single parent, any of that stuff, I was raising 3 children with my husband. And one of those children decided to get into a lot of trouble and going in and out of juvenile hall. And I remember having my prayer group at church praying consistently for my son. And I remember this one lady who we are good friends now, but I did not like her then. I'm being transparent. I don't know why. I just had this weird feeling, and it's been my own stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she came up to me one day and she said, "You know that what you're going through is not about your son as much as it is about you." Maybe that's why I didn't like her. Because I didn't like that. I was like, what do you mean it's about me? I'm not the one getting in trouble. I did everything I could. And, I'm also homeschooling at this point. So
Wow.
these kids, and I'm a stay-at-home mom, and we go to church. We're this perfect family. No such thing, right? No such thing.
Right.
Anyway, she told me that, and it took me many, many years to figure out that what she said was very right. God was preparing me and giving me tools and teaching me so that I would wind up later with these young boys that I got. So, like I said, he prepares. So there's a scripture about preparing that I wanted to read. First is God in Exodus 4:11. God says that he equips us with everything that we need. And we don't think that when we're going through something, you feel less than, but he does equip us. And then also excuse me, I don't know how to do this on the.
It's okay. Take your time. Take your time. I'm loving every bit of it already.
In Philippians 1:6, he says, "And I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of the Lord Jesus Christ." So what he starts in us, he doesn't finish. So fast forwarding just a little bit, I have these women praying for my son. God gives me a word and says that you're to be like a spectator. And I hear the word very clearly. But I don't know what that means. Like, what do you mean? So I'm praying, what does it mean? So I go to the women, I'm in Bible study, and we're praying. And this woman comes up to me and says to me, the same woman, and says to me, "The Lord says you need to be like a spectator." And I just was like, and I slammed my hands on the table, and I was like, "But what does that mean?"
Right.
So now I'm not thinking this woman, she gets the same exact word that I've gotten. I have not told anybody that I got this word. So anyway, she says, it's like being a spectator. You step back and you need to be, you're clapping, you're cheering them on, you're loving them, but you need to step back some. And it took me time. It was, time to figure that out. And through this journey, I wound up getting divorced from the father. And we had a lot going on, and my children are growing up. My son is still getting into a little bit of trouble. And but the Lord teaches me to step back. The Lord teaches me how to have a thicker skin. The Lord teaches me how to be obedient in all
That's
of this.
good.
And
Yeah.
and it was really difficult because I wasn't 100% obedient. So I think that when people look at someone like me, who's like, maybe they'll say, oh, look at her, she's been doing this and she's done this. Yeah, but I've had my journey. I didn't stay 100%, but I always stayed with the Lord. I always trusted him and believed in him, but I made my mistakes also. So that's for another time, I think. Anyway, so
I have one
yeah.
quick question. When you felt the Lord telling you to step back, were you able to do that immediately, or did that still take some time for you to do?
Oh, that took some time.
Mm-hmm.
It was like it. I will say this. I think I first had to sever my feelings, how I felt, how I reacted, my day could not be predicated on what my son was doing. And that was the first thing, that I felt like a failure as a parent. And I think his father, we both felt kind of failures as parents. Like, how could this happen? We raised our children in a particular type of home. We homeschooled, we went to church, we're involved. Even my son was involved. And so I had to learn how to separate him from me, that what he did was a choices that he was making. And even later, he's told me it had nothing to do with his father and I. It had nothing to do with his upbringing. It had everything to do with choices he made. And so the first thing I'm doing is like thinking about kind of pushing aside, okay, because every time I get a phone call, I would think, oh God, what happened? Did they pick him up? Is he going to be going to jail again? Is he, am I going to be having to go to court again? He was on probation for a while. And that is a very difficult journey in of itself, being that parent and having to go through that. But as I'm going through my divorce, I decided, not because I wanted to, because a friend of mine, so you got to stay accountable, right? Got to have those
Mm-hmm.
friends in your life. Don't
Right.
stay isolated. I think that's the one thing that we do, is we a lot of times we isolate ourselves. And the
Right.
Bible says in Proverbs 18:1 that an isolated man rages against all kinds of wisdom, because we're not listening to the wisdom and the counsel of God. We're now just listening to our own thoughts. There's a time for that,
Right.
where we
And
need to just separate, but for a lengthy amount of time, no. And so one of my friends said, I don't care what you do at this time in your life, but you stay in church. And I did. And that was the best thing. And even though I was not following after God, I was in a wrong relationship and everything. And that leads into the next thing. So here I'm not in a right relationship, but I'm also, looking for work and trying to become the single mom. And
Right.
I had been a stay-at-home mom for a long time. So that transition right there was difficult for me, because I had always been a stay-at-home mom for the most part, for many years. And then I had this son who was having problems, and I'm going through the divorce, and, my
Right.
older daughter was doing some things that weren't right. And so our relationship wasn't totally right there. And I'm just basically kind of thrashed, not knowing what to do, but I knew I had to get work. And a friend of mine was telling me about a program in Oakland and said, you should go because they're going to give you free clothes afterwards and it'll help you with your job interview. They give you interview clothes. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to drive. I was living in Fairfield at the time and it was at nighttime in downtown Oakland. And I just was like, no,
like, that's not happening.
but I felt this unction, an
Mhm.
unction. So I went and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. Well, guess what? Was telling part of this story because they are asking lots of questions. It was a 6 or an 8 week program. And I met my supervisor. She heard my story and says, I think I have a job for you. So hence going back to, this is more about you than it is about your son, but this journey that I was going through with my son led me to my first professional job. And that was with Seneca, learning about mental health and working with children and going in and out of juvenile hall and on probation. So I was a family partner. So I was there to engage with the parents, the caregivers, and help them to be successful navigating the system, the judicial and social services systems. And anywho, so that then began the next leg of my journey into, sooner, let's see, not very much later is when I meet my boys, right? So I am at Seneca. My ex-husband calls me and says, my ex-husband calls me and says, hey, my sister's boys are in foster care. And he says, I know that you told me to let you know if that, the kids are okay or whatever. And he says, the family finding people want to, bring people in to have support for the boys. And I was like, of course, no problem. I'll be part of this. Now, mind you, I'd never met my nephews. They were 7 and 8 at that time. And I think I met one of them when he was really little. So I didn't really know them. They have an older brother that I knew really well, but those guys I didn't know. And I get a call one day and it's from Seneca, but it's on my personal phone. And I'm like, well, why are you guys calling me, here on my personal phone? And he's like, well, we're calling from family findings. And I said, I work for Seneca, but they were calling about my nephews to connect me with my nephews. And I thought, well, the agency is huge, right? But that was not an accident. It's so God, it's amazing how God it is. So anyway, so they connect me and he asked me if I was willing to go see the children and be part of their lives, just, to be part of their lives. I didn't know anything really that was going on. And I said, sure. Well, it takes a little bit of time for that. So you have to, because it was supervised visitation, you have to give your information. They do a mini background check and all of that. They didn't do a major one. They just want to make sure you're not some weirdo coming in to see the kids. In the meantime of this happening, I'm at my office, which has 5 programs. And I'm in the main part of the office and I hear them talking about, so it's maybe fast forward 2-3 weeks. I don't even know. And I hadn't heard back from the family finding people yet. And they're talking about 2 kids. And I'm in the Oakland office. They called me from the San Francisco office. And they're talking about these 2 boys. And I'm just kind of listening. They didn't say their names or anything. And I said, what are the boys' names you're talking about? And Lamont and Josiah. It's them. And I went, those are my nephews. And they're like, there's really? Yes. But so they were, I guess, considering bringing them into the adoption program or the foster care program over on the Oakland side. And I'm not really sure why. So anyway, about, I don't know, a couple weeks after that, I start going to visit the kids. So I get off early Thursday. I go and pick up my ex-mother-in-law. And then I come to Alameda, pick up my daughter who's living with me at the time with my brand new grandbaby. And we go out to San Francisco to meet these boys. and I brought my mother, well, ex-mother-in-law, because I want to have somebody that they know to
Right.
kind of connect us. And mind you, my her name's Jeanette. We didn't have the greatest relationship, but she was willing, and that was good. We actually were able to come together, which that's another God thing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
bring us. So we did this for quite a while. Every Thursday, I'd get off early from work. We'd go pick up my daughter. We'd go over to San Francisco and we'd visit these boys, and we had to do supervised visits. And then slowly but surely, then they let me take the boys and go out to San Francisco, get something to eat. And then of course the boys want to come and to my house, they
Right.
want to come and spend the night. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
sure, why not? That's fine. You guys could come spend the night. Now, mind you, nowhere in my head was there any thoughts of me being their mother. As a matter of
Mm-hmm.
fact, one of the times that I had them with me, one of them said, I wish you were my mother. And I was like, that's so sweet, but you have a mother and she's going to get better and we're going to pray for her. Right. Well, fast forwarding there now that the foster care system is saying, would you like to be their foster mother? And I was like, how am I going to afford this? Right. Because the
Mm-hmm.
job I had, it had made decent money. So here, this is another piece. When I moved out on my own, I asked the Lord for a certain amount of money.
Mm.
And I asked him, I said, Lord, I need to make this much amount of money in order to survive. Well, I didn't get that. I didn't get it. So I'm wondering, as these boys, they're asking me for the boys to come, how am I going to afford this? Well, of course they give you money for the kids and all of that. But it's not a lot of money. And so one day I was talking to someone on the phone, and this is before I get them. I don't even remember if I said yes or not, but no, I hadn't said yes. And I heard the Lord say, God takes care of the widows and the orphans. We're to take care of we're to take care of the widows and the orphans. And I went, I know what I need to do. I'm supposed to take these kids. It was like, and I don't even remember who I was talking to. I have no memory of that, but I remember that piece. And I remember knowing deep down that I was supposed to take these kids, and I didn't know how it was going to work. Because mind you, my youngest now is 18 and moving out and married. And my other two are grown and out of the house. I'm finally, from the time I was been a mom since I've been 19, I'm finally in my 40s, and I'm like, yes, I'm no longer a mother. Well, I'm a mother, but I'm not going to have any kids in my house.
Mm-hmm.
So my daughter had left in that August. And actually, this is the funny thing. She left in August to go be with her husband. And I remember every day for about a week coming home and being sad and kind of crying, And then one day I came home and I went, like, wow, this is nice. I come home and it's the same way I left it. There's
Yes.
nobody, there's no noise when I want to be quiet. And so this all happened prior to getting the boys, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that, I've had this epiphany first of like, yes, I'm going to be, no, there's not going to be anybody at my house. It's just going to be me. There was no dogs. I could go
Mm-hmm.
out whenever I want, do whatever I want, but God, because what I was
Mm-hmm.
doing wasn't all right. And so once I decided to take the boys, my friend who had been a very instrumental in just loving me where I was at, and loving me, she says, that person cannot be in your life anymore when these boys come into this house. Now, she had never said that to me before. She let me be, and pretty much, let me be in my sin. And She says, you know that those, and I knew that because God had already started working that out in me and telling me and talking to me about I needed to break this off. And that's how good God is. He doesn't just, it doesn't always just happen that way. He prepares our hearts, He prepares our minds, He
Right.
prepares us financially. So fast forward, the boys come February 13th, 2011, and they are here. So we just had our 10-year anniversary of them being in the house, not the adoption, but being
Mm-hmm.
here.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say that it was the greatest thing on planet Earth, and sometimes it was, but many times I was very frustrated. I had never been a single mom. I did not know what single parenting entailed. And I didn't have the husband to go, and my older kids, I could call their dad. We didn't split up until my youngest daughter was older. So we raised all of our kids together. So I
Mm-hmm.
had literally no clue what it was like to be a single parent. I was working, so I had that in place. I had a little extra money that I got from the foster care agency. So my finances were okay. Actually, my finances were good in that I didn't owe anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was in place. But now here it is. I let go of this, relationship. So I have no man, nobody that I'm parenting with. And that for me was an eye opener because I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't just go, hey, honey, I want to go out with the girls tonight. Can you watch the boys?
Right.
Or I got to go to the grocery store. And it's not like, you just walk out and you go, okay, babe, I'm going to the grocery store. Whatever it is that you need to do, you're now in control of everything. You're in
Right.
control of where they go, when they go. You have to get them everywhere they go, to baseball practice, to basketball practice, to church, and all of those things. So that kind of all hit me, and
Mm-hmm.
I felt a little what's the word I'm looking for? I had some feelings about that. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I did
Yeah.
not was not like just super happy. And then plus the work I was doing at my job, which entailed a lot of deep work and working with the people in the community and at-risk families, and such. And I was doing that work at work, and then I was
Mm-hmm.
coming home and doing the work, meeting with social
Right.
workers and having to go to the school and making sure, because both one was in special ed and the other one was bouncing around off the walls in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was like, oh gosh, what do I do now? Thankfully, so here's where God prepared me. He put me in this organization that I had no clue about mental health and dealing with children with deep, trauma and
Yeah.
from the foster care. I had none of that, training. He put me in that agency, and I had a ton of training at this point now, and even
Mm-hmm.
more to fast forwarding, more to come. And I had an extremely good support system there because I'm working with therapists,
Right.
all therapists, so that are working with these youth and with these children and with these families. And here it is, I now have these two boys, and I have I may not have a husband, but God made sure I had a whole group of people, plus the God, my friends, my Christian friends, my church, and all of
Right.
that. So, oh yeah. So
Wow.
even though I had some stuff that I had to deal with though, because I still felt this, I had this, just kind of bitterness inside of me for having to do this. And I knew it was wrong.
Was the bitterness because you were having to do it alone as a single mom?
I think that had a big part to play in it. I think
Mhm.
that had a huge part to play in it. And also that my whole life had just changed. It went from me being I'm independent still, but it went from me not having all this responsibility to having a ton of responsibility. The kids, I didn't raise them. So, now we have to undo some things. We have to redo some things. We have to
Mhm.
gel as a family. And mind you, I still am not planning on adopting them. I still think that they're going to be with their biological mother, or that the family, my ex-husband, another aunt or uncle,
Anyone but
somebody
you,
is going
right?
to go
Right.
was going to pick up the slack, and they were going to start, and that just totally was not happening.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story, not happening. But
Right.
and the mother, unfortunately, is incapable of taking care of them, and she was in a facility for quite a while. She had major brain trauma, but they had been taken out of her home prior to that, and they
Mhm.
had been exposed to a lot of things. So her
And
rights were going to be terminated.
I can imagine that was another thing that you had to deal with them coming in your home.
Well, the interesting thing is that they really, really wanted to be here.
Mm.
They had no interest. Josiah, who's the oldest, had no interest, and still to this day at 18 has no interest of having a relationship with his biological mom. They've seen her a couple times. Lamont, on the other hand, yeah, he does, but he's a very sensitive, intelligent young man. He's like he has boundaries. I mean,
Mhm.
beyond a young man of 17. I'm so surprised sometimes at the boundaries he has and
Mhm.
has learned over the years. And so he puts them up frequently. He'll talk to her sometimes, but they haven't seen her in quite a while. Oh, they saw her at Christmas time for the first time in a while.
Mm.
But it always causes unrest. And then I have to deal with that. And that's what we were dealing with then. And I would take them to see her when they were in foster care. And that was, it was hard on all of us because
Right.
I have to get out of work to do that. And, it would cause, it would, they wanted to be there. They didn't want to be there. She would always bring up all the stuff that happened instead of just really being interested in what they were doing. And they
Mhm.
were doing a lot because this is the first time they ever had a Christmas. It was amazing. I have to say
Yeah.
this. The first Christmas we had together, they weren't living with me yet. I kept them. I took 2 weeks off from work,
Mhm.
and well, maybe I took a week off, but I took a week off from work. Yeah. And had them here for Christmas. And when they woke up in the morning, I had to get them up because my kids, no way did you have to get them up.
For
5 o'clock in
Christmas,
the
right?
morning, they were like,
Mhm.
they knew what to do.
Right.
These guys didn't have a clue. And then they walked out. They looked and they were just like, because they had never seen so many. I don't put the presents out till Christmas Eve.
Mhm.
And so they had never seen anything like that and they didn't know what to do. And they never
Wow.
had a Christmas like that. So it was pretty special. I mean, they are two special little guys. Well, they're not little anymore. They're 17 and 18. They're both graduating. And I'm like,
You're
I
like, "What
remember
is
going,
going
I'm gonna
on?
have
Where
a
has all the time gone?"
well, I remember saying to myself, I'm gonna have these kids for 10 years minimum, right? And the 10 years has come. We're up.
Yeah.
It's happened.
Mhm.
And one of them's like, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm ready to go. And he's not ready. The other
Mhm.
one's like, no way. I'm staying here. I'm going to
Right.
junior college. I'm not ready to go anywhere. But the thing is, and I wanted to come back to the obedience piece because, and I said that the God didn't give me the amount of money that I wanted when I first moved out. But let me tell you what he did through this journey. God
Mhm.
wound up blessing me where I didn't even have to work. and was getting more money than I asked for
Mm.
initially, back when I had first asked for that money, you know, and it didn't happen right away. But I do believe this goes back even further because remember, I'm a single mom. I mean, not a single mom, not when I'm a single mom, but I'm a mom, married woman. I'm
Mhm.
homeschooling. My husband and I are having problems, and he always has issues with finances, right? So
Mhm.
he didn't believe in tithing. But I started working for my friend cleaning her house once a
Mm.
week, and I started tithing off of that. And it was, I mean, I only charge her $55, I think. So here it is, I'm paying $5. And
Mhm.
I gave my daughter $5 to vacuum, and then, and so moving forward, that's the obedience part. God told me to tithe, and
Mm.
I believe in tithing. And when he says he gives back, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, it didn't happen all at once. But the first thing that happened is I had a job that only lasted a month when I was in Fairfield, and I got fired, and I went to an attorney because they illegally fired me, and nobody wanted to take it initially, but this one attorney took it. And then a bunch of stuff is happening. I forget about it, kind of. I move forward. I moved to Alameda. I have the boys now. They're not adopted yet, but and I get a letter in the mail saying you need to come to court in Sacramento, and I'm, what the heck is this for?
Mhm.
And I find out it's for that case that was 3 years prior, and I get $10,000.
Wow.
Then I get the boys, and I have them for a while, and I'm working still. I worked a year, and it was just too much. I was so overwhelmed. And so my journey of single parenting, many women I talk to, especially women, some men, it's a financial burden, along with, not having that partner. For me, that financial thing, God literally took care of.
Mm.
He took care of in ways that I couldn't even imagine. So that was the first thing. And then the boys come to me, and then they say, "Oh, we're going to give you an extra $1,000 a month because this young man has, this issue, and this young man has
Mhm.
this issue." And I'm just like, I mean, it just started happening. This is
Yeah.
like, wow. And people think I did not take them for the finances, but then, and I
Right.
felt bad. I cannot understand how I felt bad. I felt bad quitting my job and being able to stay at home and have financial stability. I don't know. And that was the oddest thing. And the Lord said, I'm telling you, it took me 6 extra months to quit my job
Wow.
because of that, because
Mhm.
I felt bad. And he's like, and God rebuked me. He's like, I'm taking care of you. This is
Right.
my doing, and this is what I want you to do. He wanted me to stay home because they needed that. They
Right.
needed that attention. They needed me to not have my attention out with other people. And when I come home, I was so burnt out that I didn't have, the capacity to continue to. And then I would remember just with Josiah balling up his homework and throwing it. And that was a rotten thing for me to do. I felt so bad, and him and I both cried. And I was like, I'm
Mhm.
so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. And that was because I was not being obedient to what God said. And I had to do that so that I could give them that and be able to have the understanding. Because he may have been in the fourth grade, but his teacher here in Alameda said he probably has about a kindergarten. He's probably maybe at a kindergarten level. He had missed a year's worth of school from first, second, and third grade. He
Wow.
missed a year's worth of school. And the other one was behind. Lamont was behind, but not as much. But he had these behaviors where he would disrupt the classroom and roll around on the floor and hide and, sneak to eat because they would hide food. Because in foster care, sometimes you don't get what you want. They
Right.
learn to do that. They hoard stuff. And I had to go in his class. I had to actually hide in another classroom where there's an accordion to watch what was happening because he wouldn't have, these behaviors weren't happening at home. And within about 10 seconds of him getting in the classroom and they're all supposed to be sitting down, he goes into and rolling and getting up and flailing. And I'm like,
Wow.
oh, this is what's happening. So I walked out and he was like, oh, she saw me.
Mhm.
So anyway, that never happened again. Thankfully, he stopped. We still had other stuff that we had to work through, years of therapy, but I hadn't made this decision right away to adopt, and they came to me with that, and I was like, well, maybe I will be, get legal rights, but not adopt.
Mhm.
And the social worker kind of explained it to me, and she was telling me it's not, their mother's not going to get her rights back, but if you do that later on, she could sue for rights. She said that, being talked about the importance of a forever family and how the kids do better with that and all of that. And so, going back to when the God said, you're going to take them, you're
Mhm.
supposed to take the children, he meant for good.
Right.
He didn't mean temporarily. I assumed temporary. God said, nope, this is going to be the forever that I have asked you to do. This is the
Mm.
reason why you went through all of this with Joey, so you could get all this, uh, experience and help and
Right.
support and understand the
And he
judicial
set you up.
system. He set me up.
He set
And
you
he
up.
does that. He sets you
Yeah.
up.
Mhm. I have
And
I have a question for you. I do have a question for
uh,
you. What
okay.
would you tell what would you tell
Sorry.
it's okay.
So
What would
sorry.
you what would you tell a single mom that might be where you were walking through what you walked through in terms of making that decision, should I or shouldn't I adopt? What would you
Um,
what advice would you give her?
pray. That's the first thing I would say, pray. Because God
Yeah.
says to pray in all things. You know
Mhm.
what? Adopt, one of the things is people would tell me all the time, you're an angel. You're so wonderful. I did not feel like an angel or wonderful because, mind you, remember, I had these bitterness feelings. I had all this
Right.
stuff that still was going on with me that I dealt with that first year. I had given, even though it was what God wanted me to do, I got rid of a relationship. I changed my lifestyle back to where it should be, and all of that is good, right? But I
Right.
still had these feelings of bitterness, and so praying, making sure
Mm,
that this is what God is telling you to do, because we are all not called to adopt.
mm.
I believe that many more are
That's
called to
good.
adopt than should. Um, I think that talk to people that are adopting,
Mm,
then think about it. What type of adoption do you want to do? Because every person that goes through an adoption is going to go through that home study, and that is
mm.
intense. But not every person that goes through the adoption has to do all the others. There's lots of stuff that like if you're going to adopt a baby,
Mhm.
that you have to go through. There's matching, there's a lot of heartache that goes in with that, because of mothers deciding to keep the babies. But I adopted two boys that by the time I did adopt them, which was in 2014, so 3 years later, they were 11 and 12. They were both graduating, or no, they were 10 and 11, excuse me. They were both not graduating. They were both leaving, promoting from fifth grade. And
Mhm.
then, but let's see, actually, we promoted from fifth grade, and then we adopted on the second, and then the promotion was a few days later, which is really funny because we had to go to the courthouse, and Lamont didn't want to miss school for the
Aw.
adoption day because he didn't want to ruin his perfect attendance.
Mhm.
So we went from missing so much school. That kid didn't want to miss a day of school, but I talked to his principal, and she's like, oh, we already cut it off at the end of May, so he's all
Okay.
good. And
Aw.
they would have made an exception. So, I would talk to people who have adopted. because it is a journey. And there's a lot that goes with it. They've been in therapy. I had to do therapy. I had to be in church on my knees in my room. And, and there's things that come up for them, it depends on what their trauma or whether when they were adopted, there's so much, it's such a big thing. And
Yeah.
it's not an easy thing to do. And it's not a decision that's made lightly, but definitely I believe that it's a great thing in the long run, because those two boys, everybody says I changed their lives and the trajectory of their lives.
Mhm.
But honestly, I'll say it's God that did it, but it is through my obedience, and those boys,
Yeah.
they are what brought about that change in my life, to really taking me back to following God the way I should be, trusting him with everything, trusting him with the finances, and trusting him with their lives, and what we were doing and the decisions I made. And
Yeah.
that I got remarried, and everybody was super excited, including them. And unfortunately that didn't work out, but the boys have stayed steadfast, and I believe that that's because of what God did in me, and because I allowed God to be in control of
Mhm.
what is going on here in this home, and not me being in control.
Right.
And so you have to give up control.
Mhm.
You
Definitely.
have to give up, you have to be obedient. And I think even being a single mom, and I've heard lots of stories. I have a lot of friends that are single parents. I say single moms, but I do know some single dads too, and they
Right.
struggle also. But I just think the Bible just says to pray in all things. Everything you do, you pray about, and you won't go wrong. And if you have peace about it. But I could say this: when God calls you to do something, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
Right.
When God
We
calls
were
you
just
something,
talking
that
about
doesn't mean
that.
there aren't
Mhm.
going to be bumps in the road. When God calls you to something, it doesn't mean you're not going to have heartache. As a matter of fact, I've had all that.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's been hard. I've had bumps in the road. I've had heartache. I've had it all. And it doesn't mean things turn out perfect, but, God, because, wait, that was the one scripture I did want to read. Romans 8:28. And wait a second, sorry. And you know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those that are called according to his purpose. All things work out for the good of those who love God. And I think that it just doesn't, that means it's going to work out good, but that doesn't mean it's going to work out exactly the way that we intended it to work out.
Right.
So it may look very different. And so that's why I stay in prayer, stay in your word, wise counsel.
Mhm. Do you have any questions, Angel, for Shannon?
Well, not so much because she answered like almost everything I was questioning. Like I
This
was
has
like,
been amazing.
but I
Thank
love
you.
the idea that she, even though she had the opportunity to have free time, right? When it was all open to her, and she was like, nope, something is missing. This is where I'm supposed to be. And I just see her as such a blessing because those kids got a second chance at life, and even though it's like she could have had the freedom of my house is finally free of my kids, which we all, and I have three still at home and they're all in their 20s, but I couldn't imagine my life without them. But I really respect adoption and being there. And like for me, my grandma raised me. So I was always off and on with her and I always talk about her. And she gave me what you gave to those kids because my parents were in bad situations, even to this day, and I feel like a lot of me, who I am right now, even to my kids, was based on my grandma stepping in to be there. She didn't go through an adoption or anything. It was more like my mom just said, I don't want to raise this here, you know? And I was lucky because my mom could have clearly kept me and ruined me.
Yeah.
And I got lucky because my grandma is a lot like you. My grandma lives out of the Bible. She has a Bible since I was in high school that I gave her. And I just this past November gave her a new one. And it's adorable because she's like, now I can transfer everything over. And I love it because the same way that you look for things to tell you where to go, my grandma did that. And when you said they wanted you to be their mom, I was like, whoa, because it gave me chills. Because I remember with my grandma, I called her mom one time and she goes, no, I'm not your mom. I'm your grandma. I love you, but I'm doing what your mom can't do right now. And it makes me emotional because to me, she's based on what I wake up to do every day. I have struggles. I have, things that hurt me, because I was a
Yes.
single mom for a long time, but a lot of my selfishness that I could have had was never there because I had my grandma and I saw when my grandma sacrificed to raise me. And
Yeah.
you just kind of sit there and be like, thank God there's people like that out there, because my grandma was, like you said, my grandma was in her 40s. She was free. She only had one kid, and my mom was a handful, but she took me on. And I mean, she took me
Yeah.
on. And
I lived with my
she couldn't
grandmother
do.
also.
Yeah.
So,
And those things that they install in us,
They
whoa,
stick with us
sometimes they
forever.
sound like them.
well, I think the whole idea of somebody caring and loving enough to take you in and to love you, because I've told my boys, I love them. There is no distinguishing them from my biological children. I love them just the same. They have the same rights,
Mhm.
and I thank God because he adopted us. And that means all of us are actually
Mm.
adopted,
Right.
and that we all have and inherit the kingdom of God. And I want my boys, I mean, they they're like my heart and my soul. And as a matter of fact, adult children continue to come back because my 30-year-old is here. So for the
Mine
time
hasn't
being,
left.
Yeah.
oh, well, they left. They've left a few times. But the boys, what I've always told them is that they were blessed because God gave them two moms. God gave them a mother to birth them, to come out of her womb, to nurture them when they were little. And because she couldn't do it anymore, God gave them another mother to raise them. But they will always have two moms, one that
Yeah.
did this and one that so
Yeah.
I am their mother and I will be their mother, but I don't get offended anymore when one calls their bio mom and the other one doesn't, and
Mm.
it's okay. I used to get very hurt, but I'm over that. And the bitterness, that was a thing I wanted to say, is that God tore that out of me,
Mm.
and I'm so
Mm-hmm.
thankful. It was a journey for that too, but it didn't take too long. But I did
Yeah.
go to therapy. I want to say that sometimes we need to be in therapy and work through some of that stuff, because there's a lot that
Absolutely.
comes up with our own children, with our own stuff that happened to us as youngsters, because all of us have our own story, from our parents. And we have, sometimes that journey takes us to where we have to get our healing,
Yeah.
comes from
I just
God.
wanted to add,
Go ahead.
since we were all raised by our grandparents, and my grandmother was a foster parent, and that's how she adopted my dad when he was 3 days old. And just
Oh,
she adopted my dad when he was 3 days old, and she fell in love with him because he was a baby that had asthma and was in the hospital with him day in and day out. And like she could have said, oh, this is too much, I don't want to deal with this, but it was just something, it was a God thing. um and she just felt drawn to this baby, which was my dad. She felt drawn to him, she felt drawn to adopt him. She tried to have her own children, and she had 3 miscarriages and I think a stillborn or something like that in there, and she just said, well, I love children and I'm going to try fostering. And she became a foster parent. She adopted my dad, and just that's why I named this Scraps Closet, because that was her name. And it's just so her, like just her love for people, her love for children, just everything. And I couldn't think of a better name to call any type of ministry or organization or anything. Like it had to be in my grandmother's name just because of everything that she stood for. Um, she was my mom, she was my grandmother, and I wouldn't be who I am today without my grandparents,
Yeah.
because
Legacy.
just yeah,
Legacy.
just like you all, like my parents were all over the place when I was a little girl. They're all over the place. When I was a baby, like I came home to my grandparents' house as a baby because my parents just couldn't be parents. And I thank God for them, because I don't know if I would have been who I am today without them. And it was just a God thing. Like,
That's what I always
you know.
say.
Hmm.
Because my grandma, I love her. And a lot of times I sound a little too much like her.
Yeah.
And I mean, we finish each other's sentences, we start each other's arguments. And a lot of my stubbornness or my directness can be because of her. And the drive of waking up every morning, even when I don't want to. And I'm telling you, as a mom, when I became a single mom, I didn't know what I was going to do because I was only in my early 20s, you know. And the one thing about my grandma, because she made me so independent, so driven to do, if somebody told me I couldn't do something, watch me do it, and then look them in the face and go, I did it. That was my grandma, and I've seen her do it, and I've done it.
That's a
And I
good
walk
thing.
into,
That's a good
I
thing.
walk,
Yeah.
I can walk in anywhere. And even though I may feel a little intimidated by different people, I will still walk in there and look them in the face. And I don't back down easily because of her. And she's a
Mhm.
tiny little woman.
I it's
And
funny because my grandparents, I've lived with both sets of grandparents at different times, and my paternal grandparents is who I wound up with, but I also lived with a friend of my mom's. Well, she was at one point. My mom's passed away many years ago when she was 21. I mean, excuse me, when I was 21 and she was 41. But I had her friend take care of me for some time, a couple different times. And I actually have to give her a lot of credit too, because she had nothing. And her name's Orion, and she just like, not a Christian. I didn't grow up, no Christians around me. But I went to a private school when I was a kid. So that was like a foundation. It was when I was really young. I went to a Lutheran school. And so I didn't have the Christian basis, but God brought me to salvation at when my daughter was 4 months old, so I was 19. So
Mhm.
my journey is different, but yeah, I'm so thankful for grandparents, and that's
Yeah.
why I'm like one of those grandparents. It's like I love my
Yeah.
grandchildren, so
Yeah.
I love them
So
to
how
pieces.
so as we wrap this up, is there anything else you want to add just to motherhood and adoption? Anything you want to add?
I mean, I think that it's stressful being a single mom. It's stressful being a parent, period, and having a husband and doing it as, a couple. But as a single mom, I feel like it is, man, like I was going to say 10 times harder, but more like 100 times harder, unless you have that, the bio dad is involved and there and taking care of. I just say you have really, it's okay to cry and be frustrated, and don't isolate, keep yourself around positive women of God and pray, because that is the
Mhm.
only way through, is trusting God. I mean, honestly, I don't know how people that are not Christians do it without God in their lives.
Mhm.
I think the most of the women I know that aren't Christians that are single parents seem to be a little more frazzled. I don't know. Maybe it's just a perception thing, but trust God, go to, get involved with women of God and
Hmm.
then look for the positive. I think that we have to intentionally look for the good in our lives because even when we're struggling, there's something good there, probably a
Mm.
lot more than we think. And if we focus on the positive, focus on the things that are good, like I have food in my refrigerator today. Oh, I can go to work because my kids aren't sick today,
Right.
or oh, great, I get to stay home because of the pandemic. I'm tired of being at home, but you know, you just have to find the positive. And
Hmm.
one last story when I was living with Orion and she had nothing. So one of my foods that I hate the most when I hated the most when I was a kid, but I still don't really care for it, is peas. I don't like peas. Now you could put peas and stuff, I'll eat them, but Orion made split pea soup. Now I had never had split pea soup. And I remember crying my eyeballs out because that's all we had to eat, split pea
Hmm.
soup. And she felt so bad because I don't like peas. Well, split pea soup tastes nothing like peas. It just doesn't. It's actually really good. And I love split pea soup. But so I look back to that experience and think about there's something good. I just take a bite of it and
Hmm.
figure it out, and it might not be as bad as you think. I took a bite of that split pea soup and I was like, oh, this is really good, but the tears that came prior to
Having to taste it.
talking about this. So finding the good and trusting
Mm.
God that that food is not going to be nasty. That And he doesn't mean for harm. He means for good. So what happens in
Right.
your life is going to produce good. You just have to allow it to. So
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. This has been amazing.
this was
Thank you
fun.
so much. Yeah, it was.
Thank
It was great.
you.
And your journey, I knew it would be you and I, we've been friends. And I was just thinking about this the other day. We've been friends, I think, for about 7, 8 years.
Yeah, about seven,
So
eight years.
I've heard, bits and pieces of your journey, but just to hear you just have a platform just to just be able to lay it all out is just amazing all over again. And I thank you so much. I've learned a lot. I mean, I don't think I'm adopting, but I've learned a lot about yeah, I don't think I'm adopting. But adoption is very dear to my heart, though, just because my dad was an adopted baby. So it's very dear to my heart, adoption. Um, but just
Not
learning,
everyone's
and
called.
not everyone's
Sorry.
called, yeah. And just hearing you say, just really hearing if God is preparing you for something, just really taking the time to listen to what He's saying. And it doesn't have to be towards adoption; it can be towards anything in your life, right? Just having that time to just really hear what He's saying, listen to what He's saying, because I feel like He's always preparing us for something. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, and you got to remember too, when he started preparing me, when all this started happening, my son was 15. I didn't
hmm,
adopt until to a long time later.
yeah,
Sometimes what we're going through, it doesn't feel good. And I would have, like, honestly, would I have wanted to go through that? No, but there was a purpose and a
yeah,
plan. And there's
hmm,
always a purpose and a plan. And again, all things work together for the good of those who love him. And he's going to see us to fruition. We are going to produce as long as we continue to
right,
want to do that.
yeah.
If we
Well, we
don't, we're
have
going to go through it anyway.
right. Well,
Sorry.
we have about another minute or so left. Angel, was there anything that you wanted to wrap up to say towards the end?
Not really. I love listening to anybody's journey, and
Yeah.
like I always say, it's either single mom, single dad, single experience. I love it, because I think everybody's struggle does deserve a platform,
Hmm.
because we don't know who's out there feeling like why isn't anybody talking about what I'm going through? So it can be a lonely struggle too. But
Yeah.
she did open my eyes to adopting, and I can't say I never will, but I'm just saying,
Say that
if
too.
it
I
makes,
can't say that I never will. I won't say that. You just never know
yeah,
what God has in store for you,
yeah, and that's the
honestly.
thing, because I know there's still situations I have to see, and I know there's something, and you know, as much as I'm like, oh my God, I don't want the kids to ever leave me, but when they do, I don't know if I can help somebody else. I think I would, and I love the opportunity to understand the adoption struggles. You know, yeah,
Yeah.
she knew the family, but then there's a lot of us, that sometimes not all of us want to adopt a newborn baby, and they want to be a helpful hand. And so she really does make it understandable. So I'm so
Yeah.
thankful to be able to hear it. And like I said, having a platform that opens your eyes to what other people are going through doesn't make you so like, I only see through this tunnel that I've made for myself. So I love listening, and it gave me chills. Like, and then to know that like, God spoke to her in different ways of pretty much preparing, setting
The
words to be
preparation
like,
was just
yeah,
amazing.
like
Yeah,
sit
that's the
here and
real
hear me.
journey. That's the real
Yeah.
part right there.
Mm-hmm.
When I
But
looked
that's
back and realized it, I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
but
And
have you
sometimes it
dawned
takes
on
us.
me.
Yeah.
but have
And
you
then
ever
it dawned on me
documented?
one day when I was working still at Seneca. I was like, this is what God meant. It was you don't get it until sometimes it takes you, like when you're right there, you're like, this is what he's been preparing me for
Yeah,
all along. And then the Lord said, oh, but there's more.
there's
And
more.
that now I'm on that more journey, which I don't know.
It's
I'm
like for
you guys can
me,
pray for me though. I'm waiting to hear back for a job for an adoption coordinator.
okay, so with that, I have a question. So, would you be willing to document something almost like, like you say you document my struggles, from the beginning to where you were like, this word came to me. This these new obstacles came to me. These children were put there in my life. And like just bring it into like almost like
Can you
a
write it
learning
down like a
manual,
book?
like a book or a learning manual that you could share with others, that you meet. I just feel like
I've
it would
definitely
be
considered
great.
it.
I think because
I
everybody makes something, like some people sit there and they write a book based on nothing that they've never experienced. And when you hear your experience, and I mean, you had me hooked. I'm like sitting here, I'm getting chills, I'm getting emotional, I'm remembering things,
oh,
and I'm thinking to myself, you opened me up to what I never thought I would want to know, because I never heard of it that way. I've heard of bad experiences with adoption. I heard of limited experience with adoption, but the fact that you broke it down in a way where you were almost prepared for it before it was presented to you. That gave me so many feelings like, wow, am I passing up something that's been brought to me that I should have like focused more on hearing, you know? So it was great listening to you. Like it was
thank
Yeah.
amazing.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you,
Thank
Trina.
you. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and end this. But before we end, I
Okay.
just want to say thank you. Thank you again, Shannon. Gosh, it was amazing, which I already knew it was. So
Thank you.
until next time, everybody. Bye.
Bye.